Hey gang, today we're going to talk about chord tone soloing in a way that I call targeting notes. Now, if you want to play like a Mark Knopfler or one of my favorites, Brian May, those guys played out of chord tones all the time, or out of chord positions all the time, as opposed to relying upon scales. Now, today we're not going to talk about arpeggios or modes or anything complicated like that, so I'm going to try and keep it really easy. I think this is going to be pretty straightforward, and we'll keep it over a very simple progression. Here's the progression right here. It's a D ninth to a G major. Okay, just like this. Okay, that's simple. So a simple chord progression that we're going to talk about. Now, the first thing would be, and hopefully most of you have this background, if you're like me and you learn rock and roll, say, through Led Zeppelin or something like that, your inclination would be to say, if I'm going to solo over this, I'm going to use a minor pentatonic. And which one? Well, the two obvious choices might be G minor pentatonic and D minor pentatonic. So let's just take a quick look at that. I've got this recorded on a looper here. And we'll see if we'll try the G minor pentatonic right here. Seems to work pretty well. All right, so we're going to play out of the G minor pentatonic, but we're going to target chord tones. All right, so first question is, which chord or chords should we really target? Well, we could target both of them, but the more important one is the one that we're going to land on, the ending one. In this case, which is a G, because we're going from a D minor resolving to that G. So that's kind of one way of thinking about it. Is it's more important thinking about where you're going to end up than it is where you're going to get there. And I'll demonstrate that a little bit as we're going through this. Okay? So second thing is which notes. So now we're going to be very specific. So a G major chord is spelled with the first, third, and fifth of that chord. Now the first is the root itself. So if we're going to play a G major scale, for example, we would play the root. Okay? And which is a G. The third, which is a B. And the fifth, which is a D. And if you play this little triad, I'm going to play the little triad on the fourth, third, and second strings. This is a fifth, fourth, and third fret, respectively. We'll find that that's that G. That's the root. There's the third, which is a B, and the fifth, which is a D. All right? So, first things first, let's try targeting the root. So what I'm going to do and demonstrate, and you can do this too, is by putting on a looper is probably the best way, is play whatever you want out of that minor pentatonic, but just at the end of it, when you're going to hit that G, you want to hit that root note, okay, which is right here. First, let's just keep it really simple and target this one specifically, okay? So here we go. I'm going to try it. I'll play it really slowly. Sound good? Sound okay too? Okay, so you can see the root is a really strong note to end up on. Okay, it's a really strong note. It gives that real strong feeling of resolvedness. That's not really a word, I don't think, anyway, of being resolved. Now, what I wanted to show you, and this is kind of what I was talking about before, and I'll play a very exaggerated line, but what really matters is not that we're using the pentatonic scale. We could be using a different scale. We could be using, a diminished scale even, or a arpeggio out of that D9. But it's kind of where you end up that really matters. And let me try and at least demonstrate that a little bit. I'm going to try and play something a little bit crazy. It'll probably sound pretty crummy, but the end note will be okay. Okay, here we go. I wasn't even trying to play notes within a particular scale. I was playing very chromatically, but by ending up at the right note and not sitting on all those other notes, it sounded okay. It sounded pretty strong. And if you end up on the root, that's a good one. Okay, let's pursue the next one. The next one in here, normally you would do the third. I'm going to pick the fifth just because, just for reasons I'll tell you about in just a moment, okay? So let's pick the fifth. I'm going to do the same thing here, but try and resolve on the fifth. So the fifth happens to be a D. Let's find the D's here. So here's a fifth of the chord, and also here's a fifth of the chord, right? Those are both fifths. There's also one up here, but I'm going to try and keep it simple, keep it in this area. Again, playing out of that minor pentatonic box. All right, here we go. Try and resolve on the fifth. Come around again. Okay, I think you get the picture. The fifth is not as strong of a tone as the root is, or the first. It's pretty strong, but it's not quite as strong, and so I think most people tend to not resolve things on the fifth, but the fifth works pretty well. Now let's pick up the last one, which is the third. Now it turns out that the third is kind of the note that defines the G major chord, isn't it? Because if I play a flatted third, if I just play the first and the fifth, that could actually be a minor flavor, or it could be a major flavor, right? So it's the third of the chord that really determines that, and because of that, it's a pretty interesting place to end up. Now there's plenty of other chord tones that we could play, but let's take a look at the third. The bummer about the third is it requires us to go out of the scale that we're using. And this is kind of common. We may have to go out of the scale that we're using to target a particular note. So this one, let's find the thirds. The third is a B. And notice it's not in that minor pentatonic. But you probably have noticed in music, in rock music, there's a lot of this, maybe like, Joe Walsh does this in funk number, I can't remember the name of it. But anyway, that sort of thing. That's playing with that minor and major and ending up on the third, which is a very strong note. So anyway, that's one third right there. And here's another third right there. So let's target those and see how that sounds, okay? So here we go. Okay, here we go. Not bad. Having a little bit too much fun here. You can see I targeted that by bending to it, but anyway, however you end up on it, that third is a really interesting note to do that with. And that's basically it. Practice trying to get to the notes at the end of a sequence. Now, on a longer sequence, it does matter sort of where you are in the middle of it as well, but by thinking about the last chord that you're hitting and thinking about either the root or the third or the fifth as well, that can get you a long way. It can get you a long way to playing chord tones. Now there's obviously a lot more to it. You can learn arpeggios, you can add a seventh in there and try and target the seventh or the ninth. But keeping it simple, if you just use the root, the third, and the fifth, you'll be hitting really good notes. All right, hope you enjoyed this one, and we'll see you on down the road.